quick demo to try and explain the watercolour process a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good.
I'm actually going to try and do two because they'll be fairly quick, and there's a timing thing involved anyway. While it's sort of drying off a little bit, I'll talk to you about, some of the basics of watercolour. So I'll make a start. The first one is just going to be a sky. A really good way to start with watercolour is to do skies because they're fairly flexible and you can do them quickly. They require almost no drawing up, and so you can sort of do them fairly fast and practice that way, and they're pleasant to look at on the whole. The second one will be of a silhouette kind of thing of trees, done wet in wet, as they call it, painting onto wet paper, and that has a nice effect, and it's the characteristic effect of watercolor really. So I'll get started. I'll switch to the other camera now, and I'll go and take up the brushes.
Nice.
Okay, I'm going over to the webcam now. So here we are. This is just drawn up as a basic skyline of trees, and that's about all you can see at the moment. You can see some photos over there. I want to do this sky. It'll be something along the lines of these, but not exactly one of them. I've mixed colours already, which saves a bit of time. I'm just going to wet the whole paper down with water. Normally, if you catch the water in the light, the sheen of the water, you can see where you put the water. So if you do that, you won't miss any bits. So a decent watercolour paper is made of 100% cotton, so it's fairly absorbent. Yellowish colour. You can actually put in any colours you like. And I've got an orangey colour, which would be. So I'm just putting in sort of sunsetty type colours. I might actually add just a little bit of crimson to that. I'm just bringing that down. That all blends in with the yellow orange. And I've got a really quite strong purple colour mixed up. I'm going to go at the top and blend down into the other. It's brown, unfortunately, but you just have to look at that. But that gives you a sort of basic evening sky type effect. What I'm doing is getting out some little bits of hairs and falling into a paint thing. Okay, so that's pretty soggy wet now, and I'm just going to sort of count the 10 or something, and I'm going to drop to a slightly smaller brush. That was a big sort of square brush. Drop into a smaller brush, and a little bit of stronger paint. And what we're going to do here is just brush in streaks like the sunsetty kind of clouds. Then I make them a little. It is quite wet, so you can see it running. It's not ideal. Just let it dry a little bit more. It's great fun. You can sort of play with it at this point.
Yeah.
Put in whatever colours you like. Now, because the light comes from underneath in the sunset, mixing a little bit of sort of purpley grey colour, and that will go on top of those the clouds are darker on top. I overdid the amount of water to start with, so it's really running a bit too much. I can do something about that, but wait a minute. See how it's all running down here? What you can do is you can squeeze it, brush out, and actually lift the colour out. I can use my hand to squeeze the brush so I can get rid of a bit of paint if there's just too much on the surface. So that sort of gets it back under control again. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to put a bit of deeper cloud right up the top here. And so you just sort of keep going like that until you feel happy with it. You can't, under normal circumstances, play with it for too long because it goes nasty if you try and keep brushing it through its drying stages. But you know that's essentially it. Might bring a little bit more bright orange in there to pick up that sunsetty effect too. Anyway, it's pretty flexible when it's wet. You can add and subtract colour quite easily. Now the paper's drying all the time, and it's getting drier down the bottom here because I haven't touched that for a while. So I might actually be able to go on and do the silhouette of the trees. If I use a small brush, I should be able to. So I'll do that. I was going to put it aside. I've got a strong dark mixed up here, which I was going to use for the next painting as well. But just testing it down in the corner there where it's fairly safe. It's a bit more purple than I wanted. But, well, look, that'll do.
That's lovely.
Yeah, it is running a bit too much. So it's where the timing comes in. Yeah, it really is too wet to be doing this. I'm putting colour right down the bottom. I'm trying to wait until it dries a bit now. See how it's running up. Yeah. It's actually safer, you know, when you're first learning to let it dry fully. So I've got a bit of a problem on my hands. I'm going to let it I'm just going to stop for a second. I'm going to get a smaller brush still. There are a couple of ways to stop it, spreading too much. One is to let it dry more, obviously. The other two ways is to use a smaller brush and thicker paint. Thicker paint obviously has less water in it, so it runs less. So I've got a little brush now and quite strong paint. I'm just going to try and dot in the little bit of these trees. If I put too much paint on, it's just going to run everywhere. So sometimes you have to ad lib a bit in watercolour according to what happens on the paper. Can feel a little bit like trying to tame a wild horse. It's sort of never entirely controlled, But it is drying back enough for me to do the canopies now without it spreading madly. It's actually kind of nice to have the luxury of time, so it's not drying out too much on me. But, so I'm having to put in a few more canopies where it ran up originally. I'm going to be doing something similar to this on a larger scale. And really there. So I think I'll kind of leave it at that. It gives you the idea of doing a simple style. And so this bottom part, you can choose to do that wet in wet as I have on wet paper, or you could let the sky dry completely and then just do a silhouette on dry paper, which will have a hard edge, not a soft blurry edge. The blurry edge is rather nice, it's hard to control. But that's part of the fun of it. So I'm going to swap now to the second demo, which has some similarities to this. Just reorganising the paint suck, because I've got to move this board. Oh no, I don't. Put this on the second board.
You make it look very easy, Owen.
Yeah, I know.
Very
That's
amazing.
amazing. I love it.
Guys are reasonably easy, actually. On a scale of difficulty, they're on the easier end. Now, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
This is drawn up based on this, which is really a fairly lousy photo, but it's just a silhouette of gum trees, and so they're fairly easy to find around the place. And this is sort of a preview of how it should look. There was a previous demo. When you're doing these things, it pays to have a strip of paper to test your colours on before you sort of go onto the paper, because it's actually hard to see how strong they are until you get them on white paper. Now, back to the large brushes again. So I've just got to swap bowls of paint here. I'm trying to put the bowl so you can sort of see what I've got, but
Yeah, it's all good.
yeah. Now, I'm not going to wet the paper this time. I'm just going to put the colour down. What that will do is it will stop it staying quite so wet, hopefully. So we're going to have a nice pinky sky this time. Coming down and into the fluid colour. Fairly strong. The colours dry lighter. They look strong when you first put them on, but as they dry out, they do drop off in the strength. So, particularly if you wet the paper down first, the water on the page dilutes the colour you're putting on. So, you know, if you test it over here, it'll look stronger than it will if you put it on. Paper. Okay. If that's all right, but I'm actually going to lift a little bit of colour out just to encourage it to dry quicker. Because it's normally I wouldn't worry, I'd just stand and wait. But, you know, because of the time it takes to dry, watching these demos can be as boring as watching paint dry, as they say.
Need a hairdryer.
Yeah. Well, hairdryers do work. I don't generally use them. I prefer to just be patient and let it dry naturally. So that's pretty wet, like the other one. So I'm just going to wait a little bit. Might actually lift some out down the bottom here so it starts soon. I'm just reducing the amount of paint on the surface, that's all, so it dries fast.
What type of paint do you use? What brand is it?
I use a couple of different brands. That I use an Australian brand called Art Spectrum,
Okay.
which are reasonably priced, and they're not the very best quality, but they're pretty good. And I use a German brand called Schminky, and I use Wings and Newton, but not as much anymore. They're very expensive now. I don't know why. Import duties and things. I actually wrote out a list of basic colours, which I'll show you later. Remind me. If you wanted to start, there's 7 colours. I've written them down there, but I can sort of send that to Marilee and she can send it on to you or something. Yeah. I'm still waiting for that to dry back a little bit. I'm showing you another brush here. This is called a rigger. It has a longer hair than normal brushes. They called them riggers because it's what they used to paint the rigging on sailing boats, the old sailing boats. Basically, it sustains a longer line because it holds a little bit more paint. I'll be using that at the end to do the branches. So I'll let that dry back a bit. I'm using that same purplish colour. And this is green number in it just to grey it off a bit. Yeah. Now, put it down. Again, I'm starting right down the bottom where it's kind of safe. Start. That might be a bit too wet when you start down the base, but you've got to get right back up to the top before it dries, because you do have to do this in one go. And you have to go pretty far. I'm not going to talk a lot here. I'm just going to concentrate and try and get it done. You can see it's quite wet.
Spreading out.
Yeah. The secret to this is to use pretty strong colour. Now that's
For doing foggy scenes.
yeah. I started with a large brush and it's just running too much, really. So I've got to a smaller brush to stop it spreading again quite as much. And to be honest, I'm stalling a little bit. But what's happening is the paper is dried out a bit more up the top than it has on the bottom. So it shouldn't spread as much as they go up. And, it's just getting to a nice stage up here where it's running, but not madly, you know. So again, with a small brush, thick paint is the way to go. If you make the paint too thin, this colour too thin, it just runs out of control. So the consistency of the paint should be sort of somewhere between kind of Vegemite and honey. You know, fairly thick. It still has to have some water in it, but not a lot. Anyways, no other medium does this. This is unique to watercolour the way it
You paint in reverse and oils, don't you, Owen?
yeah, you do. Yeah.
You go from light to dark, whereas
Yeah.
oil painting's from dark to light.
There are other examples I would like to have shown you, actually, which involve, you know, leaving the white of the paper, but I could only put one or two things for the hair in there. Yeah, look, I shouldn't really do this, but I'm going to go back and darken some of them. Just, it was a little bit too damp, so I can strengthen some of it. So you really meant to do it in one go, so in that sense it hasn't been a perfect demo. But it looked better. Strengthened up a little bit. It's all about the timing. The trickiest part of the timing is doing the branches at the end, which is what I'm up to now. And if the paint's too, the page is too wet, the fine branches get out of control. So I've now got the rigger brush, and I'm going to paint fairly quickly with it. And branches. Use an upward motion. Use a sort of ticking motion. It makes it look more like the branches are growing upwards. Of course, the branches have to kind of support the canopies. So you just look at the shapes that happen with the canopies and make the branches go out to support the canopy. Fortunately, the branches are running a little bit, but not too badly. Managed to wait long enough for the paper to dry enough. But you know, on a warm day, you'd be racing to get them done before it all dried out. So you get a minute or two to kind of review what you've done, so if you've missed any branches. But essentially that is done.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Mm.
Good trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good illusion.
Yeah. Now, I've done better examples. This sort of was a little bit wet start, but it still shows you that idea of working on the
Yeah, exactly.
and it's rather nice the watercolor the way it almost paints itself.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. What I've done here is I've got a painting that was done previously of the first one. So I just have to I'll just have to hold it so you can see. Can you see that, or are you getting reflected?
Oh, yeah.
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 This is like a better version of the first one, of the sunset one, done the same way, really. Just the timing was done a bit better. So that gives you an idea of what I attempted to demo in the first one.
Yeah, that's
I will show you the first one again now that it's almost dry.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Right? And this,
That's really good.
yeah, it's not the best one I've done. This one again, the timing was just a little bit better, the colour stronger. To a certain extent, they're a dime a dozen. You can do, half a dozen of these, and one of them will sort of work really well.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to get to know the feel of watercolour and the timing involved on the wet surface. It takes quite a while to get comfortable with that, but it is fun, and it gives you this lovely soft effect. So that's about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Owen.
Yeah.